He seems to, and you seem to be, I think, maybe unintentionally misrepresenting the law when you talk about Nixon. The law was passed after Nixon. Nixon had a case because the law wasn't in place. The law was effective with the Reagan presidency in 1981. Does Donald Trump think he should get paid? Is that what's going on here? Because Nixon got paid $18 million. Is he just holding these documents for some sort of financial settlement?
No, that's a cheap shot. Look,
he keeps bringing up this Nixon thing. What other reason is he bringing it up?
Let's go more modern day, because you're right about the timing of the Presidential Records Act. Bill Clinton had multiple recordings he kept in a sock drawer of his presidency while in the Oval Office, talking to foreign leaders, talking to advisors. He basically said, hey, that stays in my sock drawer. It's personal. NARA didn't blink. Obama Foundation had millions of documents in a former, I think, furniture store out in Illinois. Arguable whether it was ever really truly secured. They acknowledged that they had classified documents, probably to the tune of thousands. And there was never any blink by NARA. They, in fact, said, we're going to give NARA $3.3 million to help move these documents back eventually when we have a digitized library. That's never happened. Now, the payments may have happened, but that's never happened. NARA was perfectly comfortable accepting money for a move that won't happen for thousands of classified documents in some place near a McDonald's in Illinois, and never blinked. Never any criminal tools, never any criminal referrals. So look, this has a rotten underpinning in terms of bureaucrats being politicized, followed up by an all-too-eager DOJ to criminalize something that's not a crime. And that was the point of the president's comment.
He has done with classified documents what no former president has ever done. I mean, you keep trying to say all of those situations you represent, there was actual cooperation by those former presidents to deal with the dispute. In this case, not only is he not cooperating, he is actively not cooperating. And again, he did not comply with a subpoena. That's the end of the day. That's the obstruction charge.
This is Trump's lawyer and most ironically named person on the planet, Jim Trusty, feigning surprise when confronted with his own client's words. He claims off the bat that Chuck Todd lobbed a cheap shot by asking if Trump wanted to get paid for the documents that he was holding onto, which, of course, is undermined by video of Trump literally suggesting as much.
I can't imagine you ever saying, bring me some of the boxes that we brought back from the White House. I'd like to look at them. Did you ever do that?
I would have the right to do that. There's nothing wrong with it.
But I know you. I don't think you would do it.
Well, I don't have a lot of time, but I would have the right to do that. Right. I would do that. There'd be nothing wrong.
Let me move on.
Remember this. Yeah. This is the Presidential Records Act. I have the right to take stuff. Do you know that they ended up paying Richard Nixon, I think, $18 million for what he had? They did the Presidential Records Act. I have the right to take stuff. I have the right to look at stuff. But they have the right to talk, and we have the right to talk. This would have all been worked out. All of a sudden, they raided Mar-a-Lago, viciously raided Mar-a-Lago. I have tape, and I gave them tapes. You know, I gave them tapes of storage areas. I gave it to them. I could have held that back.
So yeah, when Chuck Todd asks if Trump was looking for a payout, that's probably because Trump himself held onto documents and then voluntarily brought up the fact that Nixon's estate was paid $18 million as part of a settlement with the U.S. government. Again, the reason any of this was even brought up is because Donald Trump himself brought it up. He's like a bull in a china shop, and then Jim Trusty is put on air to tell you that it's a cheap shot to talk about all of that broken china. Notice too how Trusty's only defense here isn't to actually defend his client, it's to leverage a bunch of whataboutisms and invoke a bunch of other people. Only, small problem, those people aren't under federal investigation or are contending with indictment, and Trump is. And look, the Trump legal team certainly isn't appealing to me for legal advice, but if they're going to try to defend their client, I would imagine that they'll need a better excuse than, well, some other guy did it, so we're allowed. I'm pretty sure that's not going to cut it in a courtroom. And of course, beyond the abject uselessness of the whole whataboutism argument, the fact is that that argument isn't even applicable here. Trusty's whataboutism ignores the fact that with those other presidents, they were expressly cooperating with NARA. Take Obama, for example. Trump's acolytes have been claiming for months that Barack Obama is also guilty here because he stole 30 million classified documents from the National Archives. That actually prompted the National Archives to release a statement saying, quote, the National Archives and Records Administration assumed exclusive legal and physical custody of Obama presidential records when Barack Obama left office in 2017 in accordance with the Presidential Records Act. NARA moves approximately 30 million pages of unclassified records to a NARA facility in the Chicago area where they are maintained exclusively by NARA. In other words, Barack Obama isn't managing any of the documents that Trump World continues to claim that he's holding onto, meaning that the entire foundation of their defense, that it's okay because the last guy did it, is a lie. Shocker, I know. The difference with Trump, as we all know, including Jim Trusty, if he were at all interested in acting in good faith, is that he opted not to cooperate with the National Archives. Remember, NARA made requests to Trump over the course of more than a year requesting these classified documents that hadn't been returned. Trump not only didn't return them, he actually lied and said that he didn't have them. His own lawyer signed an attestation, falsely, suggesting that the documents had been returned. Eventually, law enforcement had to go to a federal magistrate and get approved a search warrant, and that warrant was executed, and the FBI search uncovered exactly what they'd suspected Trump had unlawfully retained and what Trump had pretended that he didn't have. So this idea that Trump is the same as everyone else is a joke, and his own lawyers undoubtedly know that, but like their client, they choose to traffic in fairy tales instead. Which, by the way, is why Trump is contending with the obstruction charge beyond just the charge of unlawful retention of documents. And that obstruction charge just got a lot more rock solid after reporting revealed the extent to which Trump himself was involved in going through the same documents that he pretended not to have. Here's former federal prosecutor Glenn Kirshner addressing exactly that point on our YouTube legal series, The Legal Breakdown.
Donald Trump, after that subpoena had been issued for the return of all classified documents, some boxes were then moved from a storage facility at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump personally went through the boxes, and some of those classified documents ended up being retained unlawfully, which would constitute obstruction of justice, in violation of that subpoena. So, we've heard about obstruction before, but this puts some meat on the reporting bones, because if Donald Trump is personally rummaging through the boxes, putting his paws on the very classified documents that the grand jury had subpoenaed, that by law had to be returned to the federal government, boy, that is some direct evidence of Donald Trump's guilt of obstruction of justice.
Glenn, Trump was already contending with a few different possible charges in this case in particular, which include violation of the Espionage Act, unlawful retention of these documents, and obstruction of justice. So obstruction was reportedly already a part of this investigation. So how does this change things?
So, proving that Donald Trump obstructed justice, I think, was going to be a real challenge for Jack Smith. Why? Because he was going to be able to say, look, I don't put my hands on this stuff personally. I don't move boxes. I don't go through boxes. I don't look at documents. I just had my people go out and search for documents that were required to be returned under the terms of the subpoena. They returned what they returned. Maybe they failed to return some stuff. So, of course, under the bus, those people would go in Trump world. But now, we have some factual reporting that no. Donald Trump was personally involved in rummaging through and at least inferentially unlawfully retaining some of these documents. And that makes him guilty of obstructing justice. And it's much harder to point the fingers at others.
And so with Trump contending with all of this irrefutable evidence against him, if you're wondering why his lawyer is going on TV and offering up tenuous defenses of his criminality, it's because they all know that there is no defense for what he did. Again, the guy stole hundreds of classified documents, lied about it, had his lawyers lie about it, was found out to be rifling through these documents himself, ultimately compelled a search warrant, and got caught with exactly what he pretended he didn't have. How do you defend against that? You don't. And so the Trump team's only option here is to do what it always does, which is to win in the court of public opinion and try to ramp up pressure against prosecutors and judges not to seek accountability. We see it over and over and over again. But the difference now is that prosecutors aren't backing down, and Trump supporters are starting to realize that going to jail for his criminality probably isn't worth ruining their lives over. Now let's hope those prosecutors can finish the job. Before you go, a quick announcement. I've started a Spanish YouTube channel. Democrats desperately need to be able to appeal to Spanish-speaking audiences, so this is me doing my part. To help that channel get going in the algorithm so that we can finally start spreading our progressive message and breaking the conservative stranglehold on Spanish-speaking media, please subscribe and watch a few videos. The link to that channel, called Brian Tyler Cohen Espanol, is right here on this screen. And of course, to see more of my content in English, make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. The link is also right here on this screen. Thanks so much for watching.